Hey, my friend. Tonight, let's lose ourselves in a tale of history. You wake up in darkness, not the gentle darkness of a bedroom with the soft glow of a nightlight or the hum of a fan, but a heavy darkness, as if the world has forgotten how to shine. Your breath catches, cold and sharp, forming faint clouds of mist in the damp air. The ground beneath your back is hard and wet. Wild grass scrapes against your skin, like invisible fingers pulling you deeper down. Somewhere, far off, an owl hoots, its sharp echo slicing through the forest's silence. You don't know where you are, but you know, with a primal instinct, that this place is not home. Trying to sit up, you feel the cold seep through your thin clothes. A hoodie, now worn and torn, no match for the night's biting chill. Your hands fumble in the dark, searching for a phone, a wallet, anything familiar. But there's only dirt, dry leaves, and a growing emptiness in your chest. Your phone, with its last 3% of battery, lies somewhere in the bushes, its locked screen a useless reminder of a world you no longer belong to. You take a deep breath. The scent of earth, smoke, and something sour stings your nose. It's the smell of untamed life, of a place without air purifiers or bottled water. Welcome to medieval America, or rather, a version of it, where the endless forests of Appalachia, the misty valleys of Shenandoah, and the small towns nestled along the Mississippi are all you know. This isn't the 21st century, nor the suburbs with streetlights and Wi-Fi. You're somewhere in the 14th century, an era where history isn't written in books, but in sweat, blood, and whispered prayers in the night. You don't know how you got here. Maybe a dream, an accident, or a glitch in the universe. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you must survive. You stand, legs trembling, and try to orient yourself in the dark. The forest around you isn't a national park with marked trails. It's a living maze, with ancient oaks and tangled vines, as if guarding an ancient secret. The only light is a faint flicker, glinting through the trees, perhaps from a nearby village. You move forward, cautiously, avoiding dry twigs that could snap underfoot and betray your presence. In this age, a stranger isn't just a curiosity, they're a threat. An outsider could be seen as a spy, a thief, or worse, cursed. Your clothes are the first problem. That dark green hoodie, with its shiny zipper and faded logo, screams that you don't belong. Synthetic fabric, machine-stitched seams, these don't exist yet. If you walk into a village looking like this, you'll be stared at, questioned, or dragged before a priest to check if you've sold your soul to the devil. So you do the only thing you can. You take it off. You bundle the hoodie, your sneakers, and your dead phone into a shallow hole under an oak tree, covering them with dirt and leaves. You keep your cotton undershirt, now torn at the shoulder, and tie your hair with a scrap of vine. Your bare feet tremble on the cold ground, but you have no choice. Here, cleanliness is a luxury. A modern appearance is death. You move toward the light, feet muddy, breath shallow in the freezing air. The path to the village isn't paved, but a muddy track, scarred with wagon ruts and puddles. The first houses appear, low and sagging, thatched roofs drooping like tired eyes. They're built of mud, straw, and wood, walls leaning as if whispering tales of winter winds. The smell of wood smoke mixes with the stench of livestock, a strange, vivid, stifling aroma. A chicken darts across, pecking at a puddle, and you flinch, heart pounding. This is a real world, not a movie. And you, whether you like it or not, are part of it. This village, perhaps somewhere near the Shenandoah Valley, has no name on a map, or rather, you have no map. The people here don't need them. Their world ends at the forest's edge, where dense trees stand like a warning. You enter the village as dawn breaks, blending into the sparse crowd, a farmer with hunched shoulders, a woman carrying a basket of turnips, a mud-streaked child dragging a goat. No one looks at you too long. Good. You keep your eyes down, shoulders slightly hunched, mimicking the gait of those accustomed to exhaustion. You need a story. In the Middle Ages, no one is just passing through. Everyone belongs somewhere, a farm, a lord, a parish. You choose a cover. You're a pilgrim, walking from the Mississippi plains to a holy shrine in Roanoke, praying to atone for sins. It's a safe lie. Pilgrims are respected, tolerated, and most importantly, they can come from anywhere. You rehearse your story under your breath, practicing to make it sound true. You have no relics, no pilgrim's cloak, but you have desperation. And here, that's enough to make you believable. As you step into the village square, a man, likely a blacksmith, stares at you. His eyes are sharp as knives, but he only nods, then turns away. You exhale, realizing you've just passed your first test. But a whole day lies ahead, and every step is a chance to make a mistake. You don't just need to survive, you need to become invisible, to blend into the rhythm of this village, like a drop of water dissolving into a river. But deep down, you know, this river isn't gentle, and if you're not careful, it will swallow you whole. Morning light slips through the gaps in the thatched roofs, painting faint golden streaks on the muddy ground of the square. The village by the Shenandoah River stirs awake, not with the bustle of a morning market or the hum of traffic, but with the creak of ox cart wheels, the low grumble of farmers, and the smell of wood smoke mingling with damp earth. You stand there, barefoot and freezing, your woolen tunic clinging to your skin, trying to blend into the slow-moving crowd. But every step, every fleeting glance, reminds you that you're an outsider, a stray ink blot on the page of this world. Today, you must find food. Not a proper breakfast with coffee and toast, but anything to silence the screaming void in your stomach. You have no money. The small silver coins of this era are beyond your reach. But you have your hands, and here, hands are the only currency a stranger like you can wield. The village square is a chaotic canvas, rickety wooden stalls piled with turnips, onions, and loaves of bread hard as stone. A blacksmith growling by his glowing forge, a child herding geese through the mud, their honking a wordless song. You pause at a small stall, where a woman with sinewy hands stacks dark rye cakes. The smell, bitter and rough, makes your mouth water. You don't dare speak right away. In the Middle Ages, words are a double-edged sword. Say too much, you reveal your difference. Say too little, you become suspicious. You point at a cake, eyes down, shoulders hunched, as if you've spent a lifetime begging. The woman looks at you, her eyes narrowing like she's reading a book with smudged letters. Pilgrim, eh? Her voice is hoarse, laced with doubt. You nod, muttering about Roanoke, about a vow of atonement, your voice trembling just enough to sound real. She huffs, but asks no more. A cake is placed in your hand, small, heavy, and cold. God bless you, she says, then turns away. You clutch the cake like it's your lifeline, gratitude and humiliation swelling in your chest. You sit on a rock by the village well, chewing slowly, each dry morsel scraping your tongue. It doesn't taste good, but it's life. Here, food isn't joy. It's a bargain with death, a way to delay the moment your body gives up. Around you, the village hums on. A man pushes a cart piled with firewood, his face as weathered as old oak. A young girl, maybe 12, draws water from the well, her hands trembling under the weight of a wooden bucket. A priest in a black robe passes by, his icy gaze sweeping over you, as if he can smell the deceit in your breath. You lower your head, pretending to focus on the cake, your heart pounding. In this age, priests aren't just soul guides. They're keepers of order, men who can turn a suspicious glance into a sentence. You realize blending in isn't just about clothes or words. It's how you move, how you stand, how you let this world shape you. In the 21st century, you walked with confidence, shoulders back, eyes forward. Here, that's an invitation for trouble. The villagers move with hunched shoulders, eyes down, as if carrying not just the weight of work, but the burden of the feudal system. You mimic them, letting your body soften, your steps slow. You learn to become part of the scene, a faint brushstroke no one notices. But then, you make your first mistake. A man, likely the Lord's land steward, crosses the square. He wears a dark green woolen cloak, a silver buckled belt, boots gleaming without a speck of mud. The crowd parts before him, like water around a stone. You, too busy with your cake, don't notice. You stand still, your eyes accident. Each morning, the chill of the Shenandoah Valley creeps into your bones, like an uninvited guest that won't leave. You wake on a pile of straw, your body stiff, your breath forming mist in the freezing air. A rooster's crow echoes from afar, not a greeting to the day, but a reminder that this world waits for no one, not even you, a stranger from another time. You rub your numb hands, trying to coax them awake from the cold's grip, and stand, your woolen tunic clinging with straw, mocking the cleanliness you once took for granted. Today, you must find a way to survive, not just through the day, but through prying eyes, unspoken rules, and the hunger gnawing at your gut. The village by the river begins its rhythm. Farmers trudge through the square, shoulders hunched under the weight of work yet to start. A woman pulls a cart of turnips, her face as hard as Appalachian stone. Children dart by, barefoot and muddy, chasing a scrawny dog with the innocence only the fearless possess. You stand at the square's edge, trying to blend into this scene, but every move you make, the way you stand, the way you breathe, confesses you don't belong. You've learned that in the Middle Ages, survival isn't just about food or shelter. It's the art of invisibility, of making the world forget you exist. Today, You decide to find work, not an office job or freelance gig, but anything that can earn a scrap of bread or a corner to sleep in. You head toward the riverbank, where farmers gather to hire for odd jobs. The crowd is small, but their eyes are cold, as if every stranger is a potential threat. You keep your head low, shoulders hunched, and rehearse your story. A pilgrim niches from the Mississippi plains, walking to Roanoke to pray, lost, hungry, but willing to work. This story is your armor, fragile but necessary. A man, likely the overseer of a nearby farm, sizes you up. He's tall, his woolen cloak stained with mud, his leather boots gleaming by village standards. "What can you do?" His voice is deep, not friendly, but not hostile either. You falter, trying to recall skills from history films. "I chop wood, dig earth, tend livestock," you say, your voice trembling just enough to sound humble. He grunts, then points to a cart piled with manure. "Clear that by noon. Finish, and you eat." You nod, not daring to ask more. Here, questions are a sign of weakness. The work isn't just grueling, it's a battle. The cow dung is heavy, wet, and reeks as if the world dumped its refuse in one spot. You grip a wooden shovel, its handle worn smooth by countless hands before you, and start scooping. Each shovelful reminds you of your fragility. Your hands, once used to keyboards and touchscreens, blister after 10 minutes. Sweat streams down your forehead, mixing with dirt, but you don't stop. You can't stop. In this age, stopping means hunger, being forgotten, being pushed to the village's edge and left as prey for forest bandits. Around you, others work in silence. An old man, back bent like a staff, pushes a cart through the muddy path. A young girl, hair tied with vine, draws water from the river, her face expressionless. No one talks. No one complains. The scrape of shovels, the splash of water, the bellow of oxen. That's the village's language, and you're learning to speak it. You think of your world, where work has breaks, wages, the right to complain. Here, work is everything, and the only reward is living through today. By noon, you're done. The manure is moved to a nearby field, where it'll nourish the soil. The overseer returns, inspects your work. No nod, no smile, just tosses a rye loaf into your hands. It's small, hard, but to you, it's worth more than gold. You sit under an oak's shade, chewing slowly, each rough bite scraping your tongue like sandpaper. The taste is bitter, but it's victory. You did it. You survived another morning. But then, as you swallow the last bite, a figure appears. It's the land steward, the one who eyed you coldly before. He stands there, hands on hips, his gaze sweeping over you, searching for a flaw. "Pilgrim, right?" he says, his voice low but sharp. You nod, heart pounding. "Roanoke's a long way," he continues, slowly, like he's testing you. "How many villages have you passed?" You mumble a vague number, 5, maybe 6, praying he doesn't press further. He doesn't ask, but he doesn't leave either. He stands there, silent, and you feel the weight of his stare, like a noose tightening around your neck. When he finally turns away, you exhale, but the relief is fleeting. You know he'll be back. In the Middle Ages, suspicion is a slow-burning fire, and you've just fanned its flames. You need to be more careful, more invisible. That night, curled in a stable corner, you clutch a rusty knife, whispering your story like a prayer. Pilgrimage, Roanoke, atonement. But in the darkness, you hear distant footsteps, and you wonder, will this world ever truly forget you, or is it just waiting to devour you? Darkness cloaks the Shenandoah Valley like a tattered blanket, cold and heavy. You lie curled in a stable corner, the straw beneath you no longer a bed, but a reminder of your fragility. The wind whistles through gaps in the wooden walls, carrying biting cold and the smell of damp earth. Far off, a dog barks, its echo lost in the night. Like a question no one answers. You clutch a rusty knife, its dull blade offering false comfort. Every sound, the rustle of straw, the stir of cattle, makes your heart race, as if this world is waiting for you to slip and reveal you don't belong. Today, you survived, but each day is a fragile thread, tightening around you. The land steward's gaze, sharp as flint, haunts you. He doesn't just suspect, he's hunting. In the Middle Ages, suspicion isn't a fleeting moment. It's a smoldering fire, needing only a wrong whisper to erupt into flame. You murmur your story in the dark, a pilgrimage to Roanoke, atonement, a lost stranger. But those words, though carefully rehearsed, sound like a feeble lullaby, too weak to banish fear. At dawn, as light touches the oak canopies, you slip from the stable before the farmer wakes. You don't want questions, don't want to leave a trace. The village by the Mississippi emerges in the mist, its low thatched roofs like sleeping creatures. You tread through muddy alleys, avoiding the crowded square, where the steward's eyes might find you. Today, you need a new plan, not just to survive, but to blend deeper, to become part of this scene without being seen as a stray stroke. You head to the riverbank, where laborers gather for work. No job boards, no contracts, just nods, whispers, and eyes judging if you're strong enough to toil. You stand at the crowd's edge, mimicking the weary slump of those around you. A woman, perhaps a blacksmith's wife, approaches. Her hands are sinewy, her face as hard as Appalachian stone. "Can you weave?" she asks, her voice low but not hostile. You shake your head, but quickly add, "I can learn. I work hard." She studies you, her gaze weighing pity against suspicion. Finally, she nods. "Follow me." The work isn't weaving, but preparing materials. You're led to a small house, its thatched roof sagging, a crude loom and bundles of uncombed wool inside. Your task is to comb the wool, untangle fibers, remove dirt and straw. It sounds simple, but after 10 minutes, you realize it's a disguised punishment. Your hands, used to touch screens, ache from the rough wool. Each motion is a battle with your own clumsiness. The woman, Agnes, watches you, her eyes never straying. "Slow down," she says, her voice a warning. "Ruin the wool, and you don't eat." You work in silence, only the scrape of wool fibers and your own breathing filling the air. The house reeks of wet wool, wood smoke, and something sour, perhaps soup simmering on the hearth. Agnes speaks little, but each word is a lesson. Wool is our blood, she says, when you drop a strand. Without it, we have no clothes, no money, nothing. You nod, not daring to ask more. In this age, everything is precious. A strand of wool, a scrap of bread, a moment free of suspicion. At midday, Agnes hands you a bowl of thin soup, mostly water with a few turnip scraps floating. You sip slowly, trying not to wince. It's tasteless, but warm, and here, warmth is currency. You eat deliberately, listening to the steady rhythm of Agnes's loom, like the village's heartbeat. She doesn't ask about you, about Roanoke or your journey. Maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she's seen too many strangers to bother. But her silence is a gift. It gives you space to exist without questions. As the sun dips, you finish. The wool is combed, neatly stacked by the loom. Agnes inspects it. No nod, no smile. But she hands you a rye cake and a small scrap of wool, a silent acknowledgement you did well. You clutch them, feeling gratitude and exhaustion. But as you prepare to leave, a figure appears at the threshold. It's the land steward, dark green cloak, eyes sharp as knives. You, he says, his voice low. We need to talk. Your heart sinks. You want to run, to vanish into the forest, but your feet are nailed to the dirt floor. Agnes glances at you, her look unclear, pity or warning. The steward steps closer, his breath reeking of ale and authority. A pilgrim, right? He asks, his voice slow, like testing a blade on a whetstone. I hear you work well, but I also hear other things. You mumble about Roanoke, about vows, but your words are frail, like a candle in the wind. He doesn't respond, just stares, his gaze a promise that your story, true or not, will soon be exposed. When he leaves, you stand there, hands trembling, the rye cake heavy as lead. Agnes returns to her loom, saying nothing, but her silence now feels different, not comforting, but distant. You know you can't stay long. That night, curled in another stable corner, you clutch the wool scrap, whispering your story like a charm, pilgrimage, Roanoke, atonement. But in the darkness, you hear distant footsteps, and you wonder, can you keep running from that gaze, or will it find you, like death finds the lost in the Appalachian woods? Mist blankets the Shenandoah Valley, turning oaks into ghostly shapes, as if they're whispering secrets you're not allowed to know. You wake in the stable, your breath misting, your numb hands clutching the wool scrap Agnes gave you. A rooster's crow pierces the air, sharp, pulling you from fitful dreams of neon lights and ringing phones. But there's no neon here, no phones, only the biting cold of dawn and the land steward's gaze, haunting you like an unspoken curse. You know you can't stay in the village much longer. Each day, The invisible noose around your neck tightens. You stand, shaking straw from your tattered woolen tunic, now less clothing than a reminder of your fragile existence. Today, you must move, not just for food or shelter, but to escape that gaze, to flee the suspicion spreading like smoke in the air. The village by the Mississippi, with its low thatched roofs and muddy alleys, is no longer safe. You need a new cover, a new story, a way to blend into this world's rhythm without it spotting you as an outcast. You leave the stable before sunrise, treading the muddy path, dodging the eyes of early farmers. Your bare feet, caked in mud, whisper exhaustion with each step. But you don't stop. You head to the riverbank, where laborers gather. But today, you're not seeking work. You're seeking escape. There, by the murky water, you spot a group of pilgrims, weary figures in ragged cloaks, clutching wooden staffs. They're preparing to leave, perhaps for a shrine in Roanoke, or farther to the Ohio plains. You watch from a distance, heart racing. This is your chance. You approach, steps light, eyes down. An older man, silver hair tangled, looks at you. "Where are you headed?" His voice is hoarse, not hostile, but not welcoming. You murmur your familiar story. Pilgrimage to Roanoke, atonement, lost. But this time, you add a new detail. You lost your family in a Mississippi flood. Your vow is to pray for their souls. The lie stings, but it softens his eyes. "Join us," he says, pointing to the group. "But don't lag." You nod, relief mixing with fear. You have a place to belong, but each step with them is a new test. The pilgrims move slowly, like a tired beast. You trail at the back, mimicking their hunched shoulders, heavy steps, eyes fixed on the ground. They speak little, muttering prayers or fragmented tales of saints you've never heard of. A woman, face hard as stone, whispers of Saint Elias, protector of the lost. You nod, pretending to know, but inside, you pray no one asks for details. In the Middle Ages, religion isn't just faith, it's identity, law, the thread keeping chaos at bay. And you, with your half-remembered Bible verses, are a heretic playing devout. The path is rough, mud and stones tearing at your feet. Blood seeps from scratches, but you don't dare stop. The lead pilgrim, a gaunt man named Caleb, wears a wooden cross around his neck. He doesn't smile, doesn't chat, just marches with the resolve of one accustomed to suffering. You learn to match his stride, to stay silent during prayers. But at midday, the group halts by a small stream. The water is freezing, but clean, and you kneel, scooping handfuls, drinking as if it's the only thing keeping you alive. A woman beside you, Martha, hands you a scrap of rye bread. "Eat," she says, voice low. "The road's long." You take it, gratitude flaring like a small flame, but the calm doesn't last. As the group prepares to move, a man on horseback appears on the path ahead. His cloak is dark green, belt studded with silver, a mark of power. You recognize him instantly, the land steward, his gaze sharp as a blade. Your heart sinks. He stops his horse, eyes scanning the pilgrims, then locking on you. You, he says, his voice cutting like winter wind. I said we'd talk. The pilgrims glance at you, their eyes a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Caleb steps forward, voice low but firm. He's one of us, a pilgrim. The steward squints, silent, but you feel the weight of his doubt, like a stone crushing your chest. He doesn't dismount, doesn't force you to follow, but his words are a warning. I'll see you again, he says, then turns his horse, leaving you standing, heart pounding. Martha looks at you, her gaze no longer soft. What did you do? She asks, voice hushed. You shake your head, muttering about a misunderstanding. But your words are frail, like a flame before a storm. The group moves on, but you sense the shift. The fragile trust you built is cracking. You're no longer just a pilgrim. You're a question without an answer. That night, the group stops by an oak grove, building a makeshift shelter of branches and leaves. You sit near the fire, clutching your remaining bread, listening to the crackle of wood and the whispered prayers around you. In the dark, you feel true loneliness, not because you're alone, but because you can't share your truth. You can't speak of your world, of electric lights, of modern dreams. You can only murmur fake prayers and hope they're enough to hide you. But as the fire fades and the steward's footsteps echo in your mind, you know, blending in isn't the answer. It's just a way to delay the day this world decides who you are. The moon hangs over the Appalachian forest, cold and indifferent, casting faint silver streaks through dense oak canopies. You huddle by a small fire. It's crackling like a story you can't understand. The pilgrims around you sleep, their snores blending with rustling leaves and distant owl cries. But you can't sleep. The land steward's gaze, sharp as a blade, clings to your mind, like a curse you can't shake. Every snapping twig, every shifting shadow, makes you flinch, your hand clutching the rusty knife, as if it could shield you from this world. You know you're running, not just from him, but from the truth that you don't belong. Dawn comes slowly, bringing biting cold and thick fog, shrouding the path to Roanoke. The pilgrims wake in silence, their weathered faces blank as they pack their makeshift shelter and resume the journey. You trail at the back, steps heavy in the mud, mimicking their weary gait. But yesterday's suspicion lingers, like an unhealed wound. Martha, who once shared her bread, now keeps her distance, her eyes cold as river stone. Caleb, the leader, says nothing, but you feel his watchfulness, waiting for a misstep to prove you're not one of them. Today, the path cuts through a wasteland, where wild grass grows tall and jagged rocks jut like the teeth of an ancient beast. You walk, your bare feet bleeding from scratches, but you don't dare stop. In the Middle Ages, stopping is surrender, and you can't afford weakness. The pilgrims move as one body, slow but steady, murmuring prayers you try to echo. Saint Elias, guide us, they whisper, and you repeat, voice trembling, hoping no one notices you don't know who Elias is. Religion here isn't just faith. It's the breath of life, the thread keeping chaos at bay. And you, with your 21st century doubts, pretend to belong to that light. At midday, the group stops by a small stream, its water clear but icy. You kneel, scooping with trembling hands, drinking as if swallowing life itself. A young pilgrim, Jonah, with wide eyes and a dirt-streaked face, sits beside you. "Have you seen Roanoke?" he asks, voice curious. You shake your head, muttering about a long journey and distant villages. He nods, as if that explains everything, then hands you a tiny, rock-hard rye bread scrap. "My mother says Roanoke has miracles," he whispers, eyes alight. "A blind man saw after praying there." You manage a weak smile, unsure what to say. Miracles are something you don't believe in, but here, they're the only hope for many. But the peace shatters when Caleb calls to move on. You stand, feet aching, and catch Martha's gaze again. Not curiosity, not pity, but suspicion. "You prayed wrong," she says, voice low but sharp. "That's not how you call St. Elias." Your heart sinks. You mumble an apology, blaming exhaustion, claiming the journey muddled your mind. She doesn't reply, just turns away. But you know, your mistake isn't forgotten. In this age, a wrong prayer can signal deceit, heresy, something darker. And you, with half-known knowledge and an alien voice, are a candle burning before the wind. The path grows rougher, winding through barren fields and dense oak groves. You lag behind, trying to keep distance from Martha, from Caleb, from anyone who might ask questions. But as the sun dips, a sound rises from behind, the heavy, steady thud of hooves. The pilgrims halt, eyes anxious. You turn, and your heart stops. It's the land steward, astride a sleek black horse, his dark green cloak billowing. Beside him is another man, in a black robe, clutching a silver cross, a priest. The steward's gaze finds you instantly, like an arrow through the fog. "Pilgrim," he calls, his voice low but resonant. "Come here." The pilgrims stare, silent, but the air hums with tension. Jonah shrinks back, eyes wide with worry. You step forward, each movement like walking on thin ice. The steward doesn't dismount, just watches, his gaze stripping your disguise. "You say you're from Mississippi," he says, slowly. "But I've asked. No one knows you." The priest narrows his eyes, gripping the cross, as if preparing for an exorcism. You mutter about floods, a lost family. But your voice is frail, a flame flickering out. The steward doesn't respond at once. He stares, then turns to the priest. "He needs to be tested," he says, voice cold as stone. The priest nods, his gaze sharp as a blade. You want to run, to vanish into the forest, but your feet are rooted to the ground. The pilgrims stay silent. No one defends you. Caleb looks down. Martha turns away. You're a stranger, and in the Middle Ages, strangers have no allies. When the steward rides off, leaving you with the priest, this world's weight presses on your shoulders. That night, you don't sleep. You sit by the fire, clutching the wool scrap, whispering your story like a prayer. But in the darkness, you hear distant hooves, and you know your time is running out. Roanoke, real or not, won't save you. Only cunning, or luck, can keep you alive past tomorrow. The sky over the Appalachian forest is gray, as if holding a secret you're not allowed to know. You huddle by the dying fire, its faint glow flickering on the weathered faces of the pilgrims. The wood crackles, but it can't drown out the echo of hooves in your mind. The land steward's steps, and the priest's chilling gaze. Last night, when he looked at you, his silver cross gleamed like a blade, ready to cut through the disguise you've worked so hard to build. You clutch the rusty knife, its dull edge warm in your hand, and murmur your story. Pilgrimage to Roanoke, atonement, a lost soul. But those words are now just frail breaths, too weak to withstand the cold wind blowing through this world. Dawn creeps in, bringing thick fog and bone-chilling cold. The pilgrims wake in silence, their gaunt figures packing the makeshift shelter and resuming the journey. You trail at the back, steps heavy in the mud, mimicking their weary rhythm. But yesterday's suspicion clings, like a shadow you can't shake. Martha no longer looks at you, her gaze fixed ahead, as if you've become a curse. Jonah, the boy who shared his bread, keeps his distance, his eyes full of worry. Only Caleb, the leader, remains silent, but you feel his watchfulness, waiting for a slip to confirm what the priest planted in their minds. You're not one of them. Today's path winds through a narrow valley, where wild grass grows tall and jagged rocks jut like scars on the earth. You walk, your bare feet aching, scratches now part of your body. In the Middle Ages, pain isn't unusual. It's life's rhythm, its breath, proof you're still alive. The pilgrims murmur prayers, their voices low, blending with the wind. Saint Elias, shield us, they whisper, and you echo, voice soft, hoping no one notices your offbeat chant. Religion here is a river, carrying everyone in its current, and you, with your 21st century doubts, struggle to swim against it without drowning. At midday, the group stops by a small stream, its water clear but icy. You kneel, scooping with trembling hands, drinking as if swallowing your last hope. Another pilgrim, a gaunt man named Ezra, sits near you. "What did you see in Mississippi?" he asks, curious but not friendly. You mutter about floods, a lost family, but his eyes don't soften. "Strange," he says, slowly. "I've got kin there. Never heard of floods." Your heart sinks. You force a weak smile, saying he might not know everything, then turn away, praying he doesn't dig deeper. But you know, each lie is a stone, and you're building your own tomb. But then, as the group prepares to move, a sound rises from behind, the heavy, steady thud of hooves, like a predator's heartbeat. The pilgrims halt, eyes anxious. You turn, and your heart stops. It's the priest, astride a brown horse, his black robe billowing, the silver cross glinting in the weak sunlight. Beside him is a soldier, in leather armor, gripping a spear. The priest's gaze finds you instantly, like an arrow through the fog. "Pilgrim," he calls, his voice low but resonant. "Come here." The pilgrims stare, silent, but the air hums with tension. Caleb steps forward, voice low but firm. "He's one of us." The priest doesn't reply, just watches, his gaze stripping your disguise. "He comes with me," he says, not a request, but a command. You step forward, each movement like walking on thin ice, heart pounding. The priest doesn't dismount, just stares, his eyes reading a book written in blood. "You say you pray for family," he says, slowly, "but I heard no saint's name in your prayers. You mutter about Saint Elias, but your voice is frail, a flame before a storm." The priest doesn't respond at once. He stares, then turns to the soldier. "Take him to the chapel in the valley," he says, voice cold as stone. The soldier nods, gripping his spear. You want to run, to vanish into the forest, but your feet are rooted to the ground. The pilgrims stay silent. No one defends you. Martha looks down. Jonah turns away. You're a stranger. And in the Middle Ages, strangers have no allies. When the soldier grabs your shoulder, you feel this world's weight crush your chest like an immovable stone. The chapel, small and deep in the valley, is a rough stone building, its thatched roof sagging like tired eyes. You're led inside, faint light from wall cracks illuminating a simple wooden altar. The priest sits on a chair, his silver cross gleaming. "Kneel," he says, voice low. You kneel, knees aching on the cold stone floor. "Tell me your story," he says, eyes never leaving you. You mutter about Roanoke, floods, vows, but each word feels like a stone falling into an abyss. The priest says nothing, just watches, and you know, he doesn't believe. When he stands, his gaze is a judgment. "We'll test you," he says, voice cold as winter wind. "If you're God's own, you'll live." You don't know what test means, but you feel its danger, like a blade at your throat. That night, locked in a chapel corner, you clutch the wool scrap, murmuring prayers you don't believe. In the darkness, you hear the wind howl through the cracks, and you wonder, can you escape that gaze, or will it find you, like darkness finds the lost in the Appalachian woods? The darkness in the small Shenandoah Valley chapel isn't just the absence of light, it's heavy, as if the stone walls are breathing, pressing against you. You huddle in a corner, back against the cold floor, clutching the tattered wool scrap like a final talisman. The wind howls through gaps in the thatched roof, carrying biting cold and the smell of damp earth. Somewhere, far off, an owl hoots, its sharp echo like a warning. The rusty knife, dull and cracked, lies in your hand, useless against the coming danger. The priest, with his silver cross and razor-sharp gaze, said you'd be tested. You don't know what that means, but each heartbeat whispers, run or die. The night drags on, endless. You don't sleep, don't dare sleep. Every sound, creaking wood, distant footsteps, makes you flinch, your hand gripping the knife, as if it could shield you from this world. You murmur your story, pilgrimage to Roanoke, atonement, a lost soul from the Mississippi plains. But those words are now ashes, too weak to hide the truth that you're an outsider, a tear in this era's fabric. The priest's gaze, cold and piercing, saw through you, and you know, he isn't seeking truth, he's seeking sin. Dawn arrives, feeble, gray light seeping through wall cracks, illuminating the rough wooden altar. You hear footsteps, slow but certain, and the chapel door opens. The priest enters, black robe billowing, silver cross gleaming in his hand. Behind him is the soldier, leather armor clinking, eyes empty as one accustomed to violence. "Stand," the priest says, voice low but sharp. You stand, legs trembling, knees aching on the cold stone. He doesn't look at you, just points to the altar. "Kneel. Pray." You kneel, eyes down, murmuring prayers learned from the pilgrims. "Saint Elias, guide us," you whisper, voice shaking, hoping it's enough to mask your deceit. But the priest isn't satisfied. He steps closer, his cross touching your shoulder, cold as ice. "Do you know Saint Elias?" he asks, voice slow, like testing a blade on a whetstone. You nod, muttering about Roanoke's miracles, but your words stumble. Too fast, too modern. He squints, his gaze slicing through your disguise. "You don't know," he says, not a question, but a judgment. He orders you to tell your story again. You repeat. Mississippi floods, lost family, a vow of atonement. But each word feels like a stone falling into an abyss. Silent. The priest says nothing, just watches, his eyes reading a book written in blood. "You have no relics," he says, voice cold. "You don't know the prayers. You don't belong here. You want to protest, to claim you're just a lost pilgrim, but your voice catches, like a flame snuffed out." He turns to the soldier. "Keep him here. We'll test him tomorrow." The soldier grabs your shoulder, leading you to a smaller chapel corner, where a rope is tied around your wrists, tethered to a wooden post. It's not tight, but enough to remind you there's no escape. The priest leaves, leaving you with the soldier, his eyes blank, but his hand always on his sword's hilt. You sit, back against the post, listening to the wind and your own heartbeat. In the Middle Ages, a test isn't an interview. It's a ritual, a judgment, often a sentence. You think of stories you've read, of heretics accused, burned alive, drowned. You don't know what they'll do to you, but you know it won't be merciful. The day crawls by, each hour a knife to your hope. The soldier says nothing, just sits, eyes like stones. You try talking, asking about the weather, about Roanoke, but he only grunts, as if you're not worth words. You murmur prayers, not because you believe, but hoping they make you seem less suspicious. But deep down, you know, no prayer can save you from the priest's gaze. As the sun sets, an old woman enters the chapel. Her back is hunched, her woolen cloak tattered, carrying a bowl of thin soup and a rye bread scrap. "Eat," she says, voice hoarse, not meeting your eyes. You take it, gratitude flaring like a small flame. The soup is bland, mostly water with turnip bits, but it's warm. And here, warmth is a rare gift. You sip slowly, trying not to wince, and look at her. "Thank you," you whisper, voice soft. She doesn't reply, just turns away. But you see her eyes, not pity, but resignation, as if she's seen too many like you, doubted and crushed by this world. That night, you don't sleep. You sit, rope chafing your wrists, listening to the wind and distant footsteps. You think of home, not a real house, but the idea of a place where you don't have to pretend, don't have to fear. You think of electric lights, clean water, days you could laugh without being caught. But an owl's cry pulls you back to reality. You have no home, not here. And if you want to survive, you must escape this rope, this priest's gaze, this tightening world. In the darkness, you begin rubbing the rope against the wooden post, slowly, silently, each motion a wordless prayer. You don't know where you'll go if you break free, but you know, staying here is death. And as moonlight spills through a crack, you see the rope fraying, and a tiny spark of hope, fragile as a dying flame, flares in your chest. The darkness in the small Shenandoah Valley chapel is alive, crawling over stone walls, as if to swallow you whole. You sit, back against a wooden post, rope chafing your wrists, each slow motion a wordless prayer. Moonlight slips through gaps in the thatched roof, feeble, illuminating the rope, now half frayed, its fibers unraveling like small wounds. The rusty knife lies in your hand, too dull to be useful, but you grip it tight, as if it's an anchor keeping you from the abyss of fear. The wind howls outside, mingling with distant owl cries, a wordless song of your fragility. You know, if you don't escape tonight, tomorrow will be your last day. Each time you rub the rope against the post, you pause, listening. The soldier guarding you sits in the chapel's far corner, head slumped, snoring softly like rustling leaves. But you don't trust he's truly asleep. In the Middle Ages, carelessness is a luxury, and you've learned that the eyes of power can open at any moment. You keep rubbing, slowly, silently, each frayed fiber a step closer to freedom, or death. You don't know where you'll go if you break free. The Appalachian forest is a maze, full of beasts and bandits. But staying here, with the priest and his silver cross, is a sentence already written. The rope finally snaps, a small crack echoing sharply in the dark. You freeze, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the soldier. He doesn't stir. You untie the rope, red welts bleeding on your wrists, but you feel no pain. Adrenaline surges, sharp as a blade. You stand, gently, bare feet touching the cold stone floor. The rusty knife stays in your hand, not a weapon, but a symbol of survival. You move toward the door, each step a nameless prayer, not to Saint Elias or any god, but to yourself. The chapel door creaks as you push it, a faint sound, but enough to make you freeze. The soldier shifts, but doesn't wake. You slip outside, the night air slapping your face, cold and sharp, carrying the scent of earth and rotting leaves. The sky is gray, starless, as if hiding you from God's gaze or the priest's. You run, not looking back, bare feet pounding wild grass and pebbles, each scratch a reminder you're still alive. The oak forest ahead is a black wall, but you plunge into it, letting the darkness swallow you, like a fish diving into the sea. The Appalachian Forest isn't a national park with marked trails. It's a living beast, with ancient oaks and tangled vines, guarding some ancient secret. You run, directionless, knowing only that each step is distance from the chapel. Owl cries, snapping branches, your own ragged breaths, all blend into a chaotic symphony. You stumble, knees slamming into the earth, but you rise, never stopping. In this age, stopping is death. You think of your world, electric lights, clean water, days you could sleep without fear. But that world is now a dream, and you must live in this nightmare. You run until your lungs burn, until the forest thins and you see a flickering light in the distance. Another village, perhaps near the Ohio plains. You stop, gasping, back against an oak. Your hands tremble, the tattered wool scrap still in your pocket, a reminder of days you tried to blend in. You know you can't return to the Pilgrims, can't return to the Roanoke story. The priest will hunt you, the land steward will track you, and this world, with all its harshness, won't forgive an outsider. You move toward the light, slowly, cautiously. The village emerges in the mist, low thatched roofs, wood smoke drifting like ghosts. You don't enter yet, lingering at the edge, watching. A farmer pushes a cart, a woman draws water from a well, a child runs by, feet muddy. Life here mirrors the Mississippi village, but you know, each village is its own world, with its own rules, its own eyes. You need a new story, a new disguise. Pilgrimage won't do. You decide to be a wandering laborer, a hired hand, no past, no future, just your hands and silence. You enter the village as dawn breaks, blending into the sparse crowd. No one stares too long, and you exhale, relieved. You approach a small stall, where an older man stacks rye loaves. "Work?" you ask, voice low, shoulders hunched. He looks at you, eyes neither friendly nor suspicious. "Chop wood. Finish by noon. You eat." You nod, asking no more. Here, questions signal weakness. The work is grueling, but familiar. You grip an axe, its handle worn smooth by countless hands, and start chopping. Each swing is a declaration you're still alive, still fighting. Sweat streams, mixing with dirt, but you don't stop. Around you, the village hums, bellowing oxen, children's laughter, farmers' murmurs. You blend into the scene, a faint, invisible stroke. But as you raise the axe again, a figure appears at the square's edge, black robe, silver cross gleaming. The priest. Your heart sinks. He stands, eyes scanning the square, searching. You lower your head, pretending to focus on the wood, but you know, he's scented you. In the Middle Ages, the eyes of power never forget, and as he steps toward you, each stride a hammer to your hope. You realize running was just a dream. This world, with all its cruelty, has found you, and it won't let you go. The faint morning light seeps through the mist, draping the village near the Ohio plains in a fragile silver veil, as if the world is hiding its scars. You stand by the woodpile, gripping the axe handle, sweat streaming down your forehead, mixing with dirt. The axe's rhythm against the wood is steady, a simple beat tethering you to reality. But then, a black-robed figure appears at the square's edge, a silver cross glinting like a judgment. The priest. His gaze sweeps the crowd, sharp as a blade, and you know he's found you. In the Middle Ages, power doesn't forget, doesn't forgive, and you, with your frail disguise, are prey trying to hide in the light. You lower your head, pretending to focus on the wood, each swing a wordless prayer that he won't come closer. Your heart pounds, a trapped animal. Around you, the village hums. A farmer pushes a creaking cart. A woman carries a basket of turnips, her steps heavy. A child herds chickens, laughter ringing out of place. No one notices you. No one notices the priest. But you feel his gaze's weight, a rope tightening around your neck. You want to run, to vanish into the distant oak forest, but your feet are nailed to the ground. Running now is a confession, proof of every suspicion he's sown in those around you. The priest walks slowly, black robe billowing, each step a hammer to your hope. He stops a few paces away, eyes locked on you, unblinking. "You," he says, voice low but sharp, like flint striking steel. "Stop your work." You drop the axe, hands trembling, eyes down, mimicking the farmer's humble stance. "Sir," you mutter, voice soft, "I'm just a laborer, working for bread." He doesn't reply at once, just watches, his gaze stripping your disguise. "A laborer," he repeats, slowly, "or a liar?" His words cut like a knife, slicing through your fragile armor. You mutter about work, hunger, survival, but your words are frail, a flame before a storm. The priest doesn't move, his silver cross gleaming, a reminder of his power, not just over flesh, but souls. "You fled the chapel," he says, not a question, but a fact. You refused the test, only the guilty run. You want to protest, to say you were just afraid, not guilty, but your voice catches. A flame snuffed out. In this age, fear isn't an excuse, it's evidence. He orders you to follow him to a small house at the village's edge, where he'll speak with you. No soldiers, no ropes. But you know, refusing is self-condemnation. You follow, each step on thin ice, the crowd's eyes like needles. The man who hired you to chop wood watches, his gaze no longer neutral, but suspicious. A woman whispers to another, and you catch the word heretic drifting like a cold breeze. In the Middle Ages, a whisper can be a sentence, and you, with your cracked disguise, are a perfect target. The house is a mud and wood structure, its thatched roof sagging. Inside, only a wooden table and a small hearth, wood smoke thick and stifling. The priest sits, motioning you to stand before him. "Tell me your story," he says, voice low. You repeat. A wandering laborer, no family, no past, just trying to survive. But he cuts you off. "Don't lie," he says, eyes sharp as knives. "I've asked about you. No one knows you. No village, no parish. You don't belong here." You want to argue, but your words dissolve, like mist before the sun. He stands, his cross touching your chest, ice cold. "You'll be tested," he says, voice hard as stone. "Tomorrow, before the village. If you're God's own, you'll live. If not..." He doesn't finish, but you know. "If not" means fire, water, death. You're led outside, unbound. But his gaze is an invisible rope, holding you. That night, you find a corner in a farmer's stable, earned by shoveling manure. The stench stings, but you don't care. You sit, clutching the wool scrap, murmuring prayers you don't believe, just to keep your mind from shattering. In the darkness, you think of your mistakes, a misspoken prayer, a glance at the steward, your clumsiness in blending in. You think of your world, where mistakes can be fixed, where you can apologize and move on. Here, mistakes are wounds, and this world doesn't heal, it cuts deeper. You think of running, but the Appalachian forest is a maze, and the priest, with his power, won't stop. You think of facing the test, but you don't know what it is, and that unknown is more terrifying than any blade. As moonlight spills through a crack in the wooden wall, you hear distant footsteps, not a soldier's, but lighter. A figure appears at the stable's threshold, the woman who whispered, who called you heretic. She looks at you, her gaze not suspicion, but a strange curiosity. "You're not God's own," she whispers, voice low. "But I know a way for you to live." You stare, heart racing, unsure if this is a trap or a spark of hope. But as she steps inside, carrying an old cloak and a new story, you realize, even in the Middle Ages darkness, there are cracks where light slips through. The darkness in the stable near the Ohio plains is heavy, like a curse, wrapping you in biting cold and the stench of cow dung. You huddle on a pile of straw, clutching the tattered wool scrap, the rusty knife beside you, a reminder of your fragility. The wind howls through gaps in the wooden walls, carrying damp earth and distant owl cries, sharp as a warning. The priest's gaze, cold and piercing, haunts you, along with his promise of a test tomorrow, a ritual you know won't forgive. But then, the woman appears at the threshold, her woolen cloak frayed, eyes no longer suspicious, but glinting with strange curiosity. "You're not God's own," she whispers, voice low, "but I know a way for you to live." You stare, heart racing, unsure if this is a trap or a spark of hope. In the Middle Ages, kindness comes with a price, and you've learned nothing is given freely. She steps inside, light, bare feet gliding on the dirt floor, carrying an old cloak and a new story. "I'm Ruth," she says, voice low but firm, as if used to keeping secrets. "I've seen ones like you, those who don't belong, those who run. The priest won't stop, but there's a place you can go." You listen, each word a rope tossed into your abyss, but you don't grab it yet. "Where?" you ask, voice soft, eyes locked on her, searching for deceit. Ruth sits, a short distance away, moonlight through a crack painting her face like a weathered portrait. "Deep in the Appalachian forest," she whispers, "there's a place called Hidden Valley. No parish knows it, no lord comes there. The hunted, heretics, tax evaders, the cursed, they live there, beyond the law." You hold your breath, trying to grasp her words. A place beyond the law sounds like freedom, but also a curse, a life forever running, forever looking over your shoulder. "Why help me?" you ask, voice trembling, unable to hide suspicion. She looks at you, her gaze softening, not pity, but empathy, deep and bitter. "I was one of them," she says, voice hushed. "I ran, and someone helped me. Now I repay that debt." She pushes the cloak toward you. "Wear this. It'll hide you. Leave before dawn. Head west, past the great stream. Find an oak struck by lightning. That's the sign. Keep going. You'll find Hidden Valley." You take the cloak, its rough fabric heavy, like a promise it can shield you from the priest's gaze. You want to ask more about Hidden Valley, its people, if you can trust her, but Ruth stands, her eyes sharpening. "Don't speak of me," she says, voice cold. "If you're caught, don't say my name. The priest doesn't spare, and I won't die for you." She turns, vanishing into the dark, leaving you with the cloak and a choice. Stay and face the test, or run again, into an uncertain future. You don't sleep that night. You sit, clutching the cloak, rehearsing your plan like a prayer. Leave before dawn, find the stream, find the oak, find Hidden Valley. Each step is a gamble, but staying is death. As the moonlight fades, you don the cloak, its coarse fabric chafing but warm. You tuck the rusty knife in your pocket, not a weapon, but a symbol of survival. You step from the stable, the night air slapping your face, carrying rotting leaves and fragile hope. The village sleeps, low thatched roofs like resting creatures. You slip through muddy alleys, avoiding eyes that might wake. Your bare feet, caked in mud, whisper exhaustion with each step, but you don't stop. You find the great stream, its icy water rushing under dawn's faint light. You follow it, eyes scanning oaks, searching for Ruth's sign. The Appalachian forest surrounds you, dense and alive, like a creature watching. snapping branches, howling wind. Each sound makes you flinch, hand gripping the knife. Finally, you see it. An old oak, its trunk charred by lightning, dry branches reaching like pleading fingers. Your heart races. This is the sign. You press deeper into the forest, where sunlight barely reaches. The path is rough, tangled roots and pebbles, but you don't stop. You think of the priest, his silver cross, his gaze. You think of the pilgrims, Martha, Jonah, those who turned away when you needed them. You think of your world, now a distant dream, and wonder, is Hidden Valley real, or just another story, a lie to keep you alive one more day? As the sun rises, you hear water, a small stream hidden behind bushes. You push through, and before you lies a small valley, ringed by low hills. Scattered wooden and thatched huts, wood smoke drifting, shadowy figures moving like ghosts of another world. Hidden Valley. You stand, breath shallow, hope and fear entwined. Then, a figure steps from the nearest hut, eyes sharp but not hostile. "Who are you?" he asks, voice low. You mutter, "A fugitive, nameless, pastless." He studies you, eyes reading an old book. "Come in," he says, pointing to the valley. "But no, here we don't ask about pasts. Only the present matters." You step forward, each movement a vow to survive, if only for one more day. But deep down, you know, the priest won't stop, and someday his gaze will find you, even in the shadows of Hidden Valley. Hidden Valley lies tucked deep in the Appalachian forest, like a crack in the world's surface, where sunlight dares only to slip through dense oak canopies. You stand at its edge, breath shallow, bare feet caked in mud, trembling from the long journey. Scattered wooden and thatched huts lie before you, wood smoke drifting like silent whispers. Shadowy figures move, eyes sharp but not hostile, as if used to welcoming the lost. The man before you, face weathered, voice low as stone, motions you forward. "Here, we don't ask about pasts," he says, eyes reading a wordless book. "Only the present matters." You step into the valley, each movement a fragile vow to survive. If only one more day. The old cloak Ruth gave you chafes, heavy but warm, a shield against the outside world. The rusty knife, dull and cracked, stays in your pocket, not a weapon, but a symbol of persistence. You look around, trying to understand this place. Hidden Valley isn't paradise. It's a refuge, a corner where the hunted can breathe, if only briefly. Crooked huts, small gardens with turnips and barley, weathered faces, all tell a story of survival, of those who refused to surrender. The man, Gideon, leads you to a small hut at the valley's edge. "You'll stay here," he says, voice low. "Work, and you eat. Cause trouble, and you leave." You nod, not daring to ask more. In the Middle Ages, questions signal weakness, and you've learned silence is armor. Inside, There's only a straw pile for a bed, a small hearth, a tattered wool blanket. It's not a home, but it's shelter. And here, that's worth more than gold. Your first day in Hidden Valley is a test. You're tasked with planting turnips, seemingly simple, but a battle with rocky soil and your own clumsiness. Your hands, once used to keyboards and touch screens, blister under the wooden hoe. Sweat streams, mixing with dirt, but you don't stop. Around you, others work in silence. A gaunt woman chops wood. An older man repairs a thatched roof. A child herds goats down a muddy path. No one asks who you are. No one cares. Here, the past is a shadow, and you're grateful for that. But the valley's calm doesn't quell the fear in your chest. Every snapping branch, every figure at the forest's edge, makes you flinch, hand clutching the knife in your pocket. The priest, with his silver cross and icy gaze, haunts you. You know he won't stop. In the Middle Ages, power doesn't forgive, and you, with your cracked disguise, are a stain he wants erased. You think of the test he promised, of fire, of water, of judgments history has told. You wonder, can Hidden Valley truly hide you, or is it just a place to delay the day you face him? At dusk, you sit by the valley's communal fire, with the others. An older woman, silver hair tightly bound, hands you a bowl of thin soup, mostly water with barley scraps. "Eat," she says, voice hoarse, not meeting your eyes. You take it, gratitude flaring like a small flame. The soup is bland, but warm. And here, warmth is a rare gift. You sip slowly, listening to the fire's crackle and the murmurs around you. They don't pray, don't mention St. Elias or any god. In Hidden Valley, religion isn't a river pulling people along. It's a shadow, left behind in the outside world. A young man, a long scar across his cheek, tells a story, not of relics or miracles, but of escaping a Mississippi lord. "He wanted my blood," he says, voice low, eyes on the flames. "But I was faster." The others nod, asking no more. You listen, realizing everyone here carries a story, a wound, a reason to run. You want to share yours, about the priest, his blade-like gaze, but you stay silent. Here, truth is a dangerous gift, and you're not ready to give it. That night, you lie on the straw in your hut, clutching the cloak, listening to the wind and distant footsteps. You think of Ruth, who pointed you here, wondering if she truly repaid a debt or led you to a new trap. You think of your world, now a distant dream, and wonder, will you ever find a place you truly belong? Or will you always be a shadow, fleeing from valley to valley? But then, a sound cuts through, the heavy, steady thud of hooves from the forest's edge. You bolt upright, heart pounding, hand gripping the knife. The hooves stop, then footsteps, slow, deliberate. You slip from the hut, hiding behind a bush, eyes locked on the darkness. A figure emerges, black robe, silver cross glinting in the moonlight. The priest. He stands, gaze sweeping the valley, like a wolf scenting blood. You hold your breath, body frozen, knowing he's tracked you, a hunter who never quits. But then, Gideon steps forward, voice low but firm. "What do you seek here?" he asks, hand on his knife's hilt. The priest doesn't answer at once, just stares at Gideon, eyes weighing. "A heretic," he says, voice cold. "He's here. I know it." Gideon doesn't flinch, his gaze sharp as stone. "No heretics here," he says. "Only those who want to live." The priest squints, but doesn't advance. He turns, vanishing into the forest. But you know, he'll return. And when he does, Hidden Valley, with all its shelter, may not be enough to save you. The wind slices through Hidden Valley, cold and sharp, carrying the scent of rotting leaves and a wordless warning that safety here is a fleeting dream. You crouch behind a bush, breath caught, eyes fixed on the priest's black-robed figure vanishing into the forest, his silver cross glinting like a curse under the moonlight. His horse's hooves fade, but his presence clings, an invisible rope tightening around your neck. Gideon, the valley's leader, turns back, his gaze sharp as a blade sweeping the darkness. "To your hut," he orders, voice low, not looking at you. You slip to your hut, bare feet numb on the cold ground, rusty knife trembling in your hand, as if it knows tomorrow might be your last day. In the hut's darkness, you curl on the straw, old cloak wrapped tight. But the cold isn't what makes your heart race. It's the priest's words. "A heretic. He's here. I know." In the Middle Ages, suspicion is a spark, and you, with your fragile disguise, are dry kindling awaiting the flame. You murmur your story, a nameless wandering laborer, no past. But the words are ashes, too weak to hide that you're an outsider, a tear in this world's tapestry. You think of the priest's promised test, of fire, of water, of judgments known only from books. But here, they're not stories, they're reality, and you stand on its edge. At dawn, as faint light pierces the mist, Hidden Valley stirs. Shadowy figures move, chopping wood, drawing water, tending small plots of turnips and barley. You rise, shaking straw from your cloak, joining them, trying to blend into this scene. Today, you're tasked with tying thatch to a hut's roof, a job needing skill you lack. Your hands, once used to modern tools, tremble as they bind dry thatch, each mistake a reminder of your clumsiness. Sweat streams, mixing with dirt, but you don't stop. Here, work is your ticket to exist, and you can't let it slip away. Those around you toil in silence, eyes down, shoulders hunched. An older woman draws water from a stream, face hard as stone. A gaunt man pushes a creaking cart, wood groaning with the wind. No one asks who you are. No one cares about your past. But the priest's visit last night planted a new seed in the valley. Not suspicion, but vigilance. You notice their glances, not hostile, but different. They know you're the one he hunts, and though Hidden Valley is a refuge, it's not inviolable. At midday, You sit by a small oak, chewing a rock-hard rye bread scrap, sipping icy stream water from a wooden cup. A young man with a long scar across his cheek sits near, the one who told of escaping a Mississippi lord. "You brought trouble here," he says, voice low, eyes on the grass at his feet. You shake your head, muttering you meant no harm, just want to live. He doesn't reply at once, just tears a blade of grass into bits. "The priest doesn't quit," he says, hushed. "If you stay, you must learn to melt into the shadows." His words strike like an axe, severing the fragile thread of hope you clung to. Melt into the shadows, not just dodging gazes, but erasing your own traces, becoming a ghost no one recalls. You think of Ruth, who led you to Hidden Valley, wondering if she knew this place is only a pause, not a final answer. You think of your world, now a distant dream, and wonder, can you live forever in shadows, or will you one day face the priest's cold light? That afternoon, Gideon summons you to his hut. Inside, the hearth glows red, wood smoke thick. He sits on a wooden chair, carving a stick with a small knife, each cut steady as a heartbeat. "You brought the priest," he says, eyes on the wood. You mutter an apology, saying you didn't mean to, just wanted to survive. He pauses, his stone-sharp gaze meeting yours. "We don't betray our own," he says, voice low. "But if you stay, you must become us. No stories, no traces. Can you do that?" You nod, but inside, you know it's a hard vow to keep. Becoming part of Hidden Valley isn't just working, staying silent. It's abandoning dreams of a place you truly belong, letting go of hope you'll escape this world. You think of the priest, his silver cross, his blade-like gaze. You think of the people here, fugitives who chose this valley over death. And you wonder, can you find the strength to be one of them? Or will you always be a stranger, even in a place that asks no past? That night, you lie on the straw, clutching the cloak, listening to the wind howl through cracks. You think of Gideon, the young man's warning, the priest's gaze. But then, a sound cuts the dark. A bell, small but sharp, from the valley's edge. You bolt upright, heart pounding. "The bell signals danger," Gideon said, "when strangers come." You slip from the hut, hiding behind a bush, eyes locked on the forest. A figure emerges, black robe, silver cross glinting. The priest. But this time, he's not alone. A group of soldiers, leather armor clinking, holding torches and spears, follow behind. Gideon steps forward, gaze sharp as a knife, but the priest doesn't pause. "I know he's here," he says, voice cold as stone. "Hand him over, or this valley burns." You hold your breath, body frozen, knowing your time has run out. Hidden Valley, with all its shelter, stands on a precipice, and you, an outsider, are the spark that could burn it all. The torch in the soldier's hand flickers. Its blazing red light tears through the darkness of Hidden Valley, like bloodstains spreading across the Appalachia forest floor. You crouch behind a bush, your breath catches, your heart pounding as if it might shatter your chest. The priest stands there, his black cloak billows, the silver cross glinting under the torchlight, his gaze sharp as a blade sweeping across the valley. "Hand him over," he says, his voice cold as stone, "or this entire valley will burn." Beside him, armored soldiers stand still. Their pointed spears and burning torches glow red, like hunting dogs awaiting a command. Gideon, the valley's leader, faces him. His eyes are sharp as steel, his hand resting on the hilt of a knife. "There are no heretics here," he replies, his voice low but firm. "Only people who want to live." You hold your breath. Your body freezes, the rusty knife in your hand trembling like a whisper of uselessness. Hidden Valley, with its thatched huts and small gardens, is your last refuge, but now it teeters on the edge. You are the spark that could burn it all down, a wanderer, a blot of ink that doesn't belong in this world's picture. The priest needs no proof. His suspicion alone is enough to turn this valley to ash. You think of Ruth, who showed you the way here, of Gideon, who gave you a chance, of the weathered faces of the other fugitives, and you wonder, do you have the right to let them pay for you? Gideon doesn't flinch. His eyes lock onto the priest's. "You have no authority here," he says, his voice deep, each word like a knife's thrust. "This valley doesn't belong to your parish." The priest narrows his eyes. The silver cross in his hand gleams, a reminder of his power, not just over flesh, but over souls. "God sees all," he replies, his voice icy, "and I am his enforcer. Hand over the heretic, or I'll find him, even if I must burn every hut." The soldiers step forward. Their torches flare, and you feel the tension in the air, like a thread about to snap. The valley's people begin to gather. Shadowy figures emerge from their huts, their eyes a mix of fear and defiance. The old woman who once gave you soup stands there. Her hands grip a wooden staff tightly. The man with the scar on his cheek, who warned you about the priest, clutches an axe. His gaze is sharp as stone. They say nothing, but their presence is a declaration. Hidden Valley doesn't surrender easily. Yet you know, deep inside, that their unity could crumble if the priest finds you. A stranger, a nameless soul, isn't worth the valley's sacrifice. You stand slowly. Your bare feet tremble on the cold ground. The rusty knife falls, not because you've given up, but because you know it's useless against fire and spears. You step out from the bushes. Your eyes are low, your tattered cloak wrapped tightly around you. "I'm here," you say, your voice small, but echoing in the darkness. The valley's people turn. Their eyes mix surprise and suspicion. Gideon looks at you. His expression is unreadable. Not anger, not pity, but a weighing of choices. The priest turns to you. His eyes gleam, like a hunter finally spotting his prey. "You," he says, his voice low. "You've fled too long." He signals the soldiers, and two step forward. Their hands grip their spears, the torchlight illuminating your face, revealing dirt and exhaustion. You don't resist, don't run. Running brought you here, but it can't save you forever. You look at Gideon. Your eyes carry a silent apology, and he nods faintly, almost imperceptibly. The others stay silent. Their gazes cling to you, but no one steps forward. In the Middle Ages, loyalty is a rare gift, and you, a stranger, have no right to claim it. The soldiers bind your hands with rope, not tight, but enough to remind you that freedom is now a dream. The priest leads the way on horseback. His silver cross glints like a judgment. You follow. Each step is a stab at hope, the torches blazing behind you like a wordless funeral. Hidden Valley fades into the distance. Its thatched huts blur in the mist, and you wonder if you ever truly belonged there, or were just a shadow passing through. The path out of the forest is rough, strewn with pebbles and roots. You walk, head bowed, trying not to stumble. The priest says nothing, but his silence is more terrifying than any words. One soldier, his voice hoarse, whispers to another, and you catch the word fire drifting like a cold breeze. You think of the trial the priest promised, of stories you've read, of those drowned, burned alive, crushed under stones. You don't know your fate, but you know it won't be merciful. That night, the group stops by a small stream. The torchlight reflects on the water like spilled blood. You're tied to an oak tree. The rope chafes your wrists, but you feel no pain. You're used to pain, not just of the body, but of the soul, of the loneliness of knowing you belong nowhere. The priest sits by the fire, his silver cross in hand, his eyes fixed on the flames as if reading a prophecy. "You can confess," he says, not looking at you. "Speak the truth, and God may forgive." You mutter that you're no sinner, just a wandering laborer, but he only hums, as if your truth isn't worth hearing. In the darkness, you think of Hidden Valley, of the people who let you go. You don't blame them. They gave you more than you deserved. You think of Ruth, of her story, of the debt she paid, and you think of your world, now a distant dream, where electric lights and clean water were certainties. But then, a sound cuts through your thoughts, a twig snapping, small but sharp, from the forest. The priest looks up. His eyes scan the darkness. A figure appears, not a soldier, not Gideon, but the old woman from the valley, the one who gave you soup. She stands there. Her gaze is sharp as stone, and you realize your story, though it seemed over, hasn't reached its end. The small stream beside the Appalachia forest glimmers under the torchlight. It's like a ribbon of silver torn by the darkness. You sit against the oak tree. The rope chafes your wrists, each breath a reminder that your time is running out. The priest, a few steps away, stares into the fire. His silver cross reflects the red glow like a judgment. The soldiers, their leather armor creaking, stand guard. Their eyes are empty, but their hands rest on spear handles. Suddenly a twig snaps, small but sharp, cutting through the silence. The priest looks up. His gaze sweeps the forest. A figure emerges. Not Gideon, not a soldier, but the old woman from Hidden Valley, the one who gave you thin soup. She stands there. Her worn woolen cloak hangs tattered, her eyes sharp as stone, as if carrying a secret heavier than the night. You hold your breath. Your body tenses, unsure if she's here to save you or end you. In the Middle Ages, kindness is often a double-edged blade, and you've learned no one acts without reason. The priest turns to her, his eyes narrow, his silver cross glinting like a warning. "Who are you?" he asks, his voice low but sharp, like flint striking steel. She doesn't answer immediately, only steps closer. Her bare feet glide over wet grass, the torchlight illuminating her weathered face. "I am of the valley," she says, her voice hoarse but steady. "I've come to speak of this one." She points at you, and your heart sinks. It's as if the ground beneath you has collapsed. The priest signals the soldiers to step back. His eyes lock onto her. "Speak," he commands, his voice cold. She looks at you. Her gaze isn't pity, isn't hostility, but resignation, as if she's seen too many stories like yours. "He's no heretic," she says, her voice slow, each word like a stone placed with care. "He's a lost soul, his family swept away by the Mississippi floods. He came to the valley for refuge, not to harm." You listen. Your breath shortens, realizing she's repeating your story, but with a conviction you could never muster. She continues, her voice low. "You'd burn the valley for a stranger, but will God forgive you for the blood of the innocent?" Her words are like a blade, sharp and unexpected. The priest doesn't move, but you see a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, like a crack in a stone wall. "You know him?" he asks, his voice low, his gaze scanning her for a misstep. She nods, unflinching. "He works in the valley, chops wood, plants turnips. He doesn't pray wrong, doesn't curse God. You're mistaken to think him an enemy." You look at her, your heart torn between gratitude and suspicion. She's lying for you, but why? In this age, a lie can mean death, and she owes you nothing but a bowl of thin soup. The priest falls silent. His eyes shift from her to you, as if weighing. "He fled the chapel," he says, his voice cold. "Only the guilty run." She doesn't waver. "He was afraid," she replies, her voice steady. "Afraid of you, of the parish, of what you call trials. Who wouldn't run when faced with fire?" Her words are like a gust, stirring the flame in the priest's eyes, making it flicker. He doesn't respond immediately. He only grips his cross tighter, his gaze fixed on you, as if reading a book written in blood. Finally, he signals the soldiers. "Release him," he says, his voice low, but you hear the reluctance in it. A soldier steps forward, cutting the rope around your wrists. His eyes are blank, but his hand trembles slightly, as if unsure of the decision. You stand. Your legs ache, your eyes low, not daring to meet the priest's gaze. The woman steps forward, grabs your hand, and pulls you toward the forest. "Go," she whispers, her voice soft but urgent. You follow, not looking back. The soldiers' torches fade into the darkness, but you feel the priest's gaze clinging to you, like a promise that this story isn't over. The Appalachia forest swallows you. Ancient oaks and tangled vines stand like sentinels. She leads you through narrow trails, saying nothing, her steps swift but silent. You want to ask why she risked herself, why she lied, but her silence is a command. Finally, she stops by a small stream. Moonlight glints on the water like a silver thread. "Return to the valley," she says, her voice hoarse. "But don't let them find you again." You nod. Gratitude rises like a small flame, but she's already turned away, her figure melting into the forest as if she never existed. You return to Hidden Valley as dawn breaks. The thatched huts emerge from the mist. Gideon stands at the valley's edge. His eyes scan you, saying nothing, but you know he's heard what happened. "Work," he says, his voice low, and you nod, joining the valley's rhythm, chopping wood, planting turnips, mending thatch. But deep inside, you know the priest won't forget. His gaze, sharp as a blade, will return, and Hidden Valley, though it shelters you today, may not do so again. That night, you lie on a pile of straw, clutching your cloak, listening to the wind and distant footsteps. You think of the woman, of the lie that saved you, of the debt you now carry. You think of your world, now a distant dream, and wonder, can you live forever in the shadows, or will you one day face the light? But then, a sound cuts through your thoughts. A bell, small but sharp, from the valley's edge. You sit up, heart pounding, knowing the priest, with his silver cross and blade-like eyes, has returned. And this time, there's no one to lie for you. The bell's small but sharp ring, like a blade, echoes from the edge of Hidden Valley. It slices through the darkness like a judgment. You jolt up from the straw pile in your hut. Your heart pounds, your breath shortens as if strangled. The old cloak wraps around you. The rusty knife in your hand trembles, as if it senses the approaching danger. The bell is a warning, Gideon once said, for intruders, and you know, deep inside, that the priest, with his silver cross and icy gaze, has returned. This time, there's no woman to lie for you, no chance to flee. Hidden Valley, with its thatched huts and small gardens, is your last refuge. But now it stands on the brink. You slip out of the hut, your bare feet touch the cold ground, your eyes fixed on the darkness. Torches flicker in the distance, their red glow spreads like blood through the Appalachia forest. Figures move, leather armor creaks, pointed spears glint under the moonlight. The priest leads, his black cloak billowing. The silver cross in his hand is like a cold flame. Beside him, a larger group of soldiers than before, their eyes empty, but hands gripping weapons. You hide behind an oak. Your body freezes, knowing your time has run out. The priest says nothing, but his gaze sweeps the valley, like a wolf scenting blood. Gideon steps out from the large hut. His eyes are sharp as stone, his hand on his knife's hilt. The valley's people gather. Silent figures emerge from the dark. The thin woman who chops wood, the man with the scar on his cheek, the child who herds goats. They say nothing, but their presence is a declaration. Hidden Valley doesn't surrender. The priest halts. His eyes lock onto Gideon. "I gave you a chance," he says, his voice cold as winter wind. "Hand over the heretic, or this valley will pay." Gideon doesn't flinch. His gaze is like a blade. "You have no authority here," he replies, his voice low. "Leave, or blood will spill." Gideon's words are a spark. The air tenses like a taut string about to snap. The priest narrows his eyes. The silver cross in his hand glints, a reminder of his power. "God does not spare those who harbor sin," he says, his voice sharp. He signals, and the soldiers advance. Torches blaze, spears point forward. The valley's people grip their weapons, axes, staffs, knives, but you know, they're no match for trained soldiers. Hidden Valley is a refuge, not a fortress, and you, a stranger, are the flame that could burn it all. You stand behind the oak, your heart heavy. You think of the woman who lied to save you, of Gideon who gave you a chance, of the weathered faces of the fugitives. They owe you nothing, yet they sheltered you, if only briefly. You consider running, vanishing into the forest, letting the darkness swallow you again. But you know, running only delays fear, and the priest, with his blade-like gaze, won't stop. You think of surrendering, stepping out to face his trial, but images of fire and water flash through your mind, making you shudder. Then, a decision flares, sharp as moonlight. You can't let Hidden Valley pay for you. You step from the tree's shadow. Your old cloak clings tightly. The rusty knife falls to the ground, not because you've given up, but because you know it's useless. "I'm here," you say, your voice echoing in the darkness, small but steady. The priest turns. His eyes gleam, like a hunter finding his prey. The valley's people look at you. Their eyes mix surprise and resignation. Gideon says nothing, but his gaze meets yours, a silent acknowledgement. The priest signals, and two soldiers step forward, hands gripping spears. "You chose wisely," he says, his voice cold, "but God will judge you." You don't resist, don't run. The soldiers bind your hands with rope, tighter than before, and lead you from the valley. The thatched huts fade into the mist. The silent faces of the fugitives recede, and you wonder, did you ever truly belong here? Or were you just a shadow passing through? The path through the forest is rough, strewn with pebbles and roots. You walk, head bowed, trying not to stumble. The priest rides ahead. His silver cross glints like a curse. A soldier whispers to another, and you catch the word burn drifting by, cold as wind. You think of the trial the priest promised, of this age's horrific tales. You don't know your fate, but you know it won't be merciful. The group stops at a small village, not Hidden Valley, but another place with thatched roofs and a low stone chapel. You're led to a small room. The dirt floor is cold. Faint light seeps through wall cracks. The priest stands before you, cross in hand. "You have one night to pray," he says, his voice low. "Tomorrow, you face God." He leaves, leaving you with a soldier guard. His eyes are blank, but his hand rests on his sword. You sit, the rope chafing your wrists, listening to the wind and your heartbeat. You think of Hidden Valley, of those who let you go. You think of the woman who lied for you, of the debt you can't repay. You think of your world, now a distant dream, where mistakes didn't cost lives. But then, a sound cuts through your thoughts. A lock clicking, small but sharp. The door opens, and a figure appears. Not a soldier, not the priest, but the man with the scar on his cheek from Hidden Valley. "Hurry," he whispers, his eyes sharp. "We don't have much time." You look at him, your heart torn between hope and doubt, knowing your story, though it seemed over, hasn't reached its end. The small room in the village by the Appalachia forest is stifling. The smell of damp earth and wood smoke clings to every breath. You lean against the cold stone wall. The rope chafes your wrists, each heartbeat a reminder that dawn will bring the priest's trial, a judgment you know won't be merciful. Faint light from a crack in the wall spills onto the dirt floor, like a whisper of fading hope. But then, a lock clicks, small but sharp, cutting through the darkness. The door opens, and the man with the long scar on his cheek from Hidden Valley appears. His eyes are sharp as a knife. "Hurry," he whispers, his voice urgent. "We don't have much time." You look at him, hope and doubt colliding, your body taut like a bowstring. In the Middle Ages, kindness is a dangerous gift, and you've learned no one risks their life without reason. The guard lies slumped in the corner, head bowed, a small trickle of blood seeping from his temple. The man, Elias, kneels and cuts the rope around your wrists with a small, glinting knife. "Follow me," he says, his voice low, his eyes scanning the door as if the priest could appear any moment. You stand, legs aching, clutching the rusty knife. Not a weapon, but a symbol of survival. Elias leads you out through a muddy alley, avoiding the eyes of anyone who might stir. The village sleeps. Its low thatched roofs huddle like resting creatures. You move, steps light, breath short in the biting air. The oak forest ahead is a black wall, but Elias plunges in, and you follow, letting the darkness swallow you again. Snapping twigs, whistling wind. Each sound makes you flinch, your hand tightening on the knife. You want to ask why he risks himself, why Hidden Valley saves you again. But his silence is a command, and you obey. The narrow trail, thick with roots and pebbles, winds deep into the forest. Elias moves swiftly, eyes sharp, like a predator at home in the dark. "The priest will know you've escaped," he whispers, not stopping. "He'll hunt you, hunt the valley, but we don't let our own die." His words are an axe, cleaving through your doubt, our own. Though a stranger, you've become part of Hidden Valley, and that, even briefly, is a small flame in the dark. You run, lungs burning, bare feet bleeding from scratches. The Appalachia forest is a maze, but Elias knows the way, guiding you through small streams and dense thickets. Finally, he stops by a large moss-covered rock, moonlight glinting on it like a sign. "Wait here," he says, voice low. "Someone will come for you." You nod, not daring to ask more. But as he turns, you grab his hand. "Why?" you whisper, voice trembling. "Why risk this for me?" Elias looks at you. His gaze softens, not with pity, but with understanding. "Because I was once you," he says, "and someone saved me." He vanishes into the forest, leaving you with the rock and a fragile spark of hope. You sit, clutching your cloak, listening to the wind and your heartbeat. You think of Hidden Valley, of Gideon, of the woman who lied for you, of Elias, who struck down a guard to free you. You think of the priest, his silver cross, his blade-like gaze. You think of your world, now a distant dream, where mistakes didn't cost lives, The Appalachia forest breathes in the dark. Ancient oaks whisper secrets you're not meant to hear. You run, bare feet bleeding, old cloak wrapped tight, the rusty knife in your hand a fragile promise of survival. The small group, the young woman, 3 men, and the child, moves swiftly, silently, through narrow trails, vines coiling like invisible fingers. The priests' and soldiers' hoofbeats, heavy and steady, echo from afar, each sound a hammer blow to your hope. The priest, with his silver cross and blade-sharp gaze, doesn't stop. And you, a lost soul, know that running in the Middle Ages is an endless war. The young woman, Leah, leads, her sharp eyes scanning the forest. "Faster," she whispers, voice urgent, not pausing. You struggle to keep up, lungs burning, each step a wordless prayer. The forest is dense, thick with roots and pebbles, as if testing if you're worthy of life. The child, with wide eyes and a dirt-streaked face, clutches a man's hand, small steps resolute. The others are silent, eyes low, like shadows melting into the dark. You think of Hidden Valley, of Elias, of the woman who lied for you. They gave you a chance, but now that chance fades, like mist before the sun. The hoofbeats grow closer, joined by the clink of armor. Leah halts, signaling the group to hide behind a large bush. You kneel, breath caught, hand gripping the knife. Torches flicker through the trees. Their red glow spreads like blood. The priest and at least 6 soldiers move slowly, eyes sweeping the forest. "He can't have gone far," the priest says, voice cold, silver cross glinting in his hand. "Find him, or this forest will burn." His words are a blade, slicing through your fragile hope. You glance at Leah. Her eyes are sharp as stone, but you see the tension in how she grips her small knife. The soldiers split up. Torches fan out like sleepless eyes scouring the forest. Leah whispers, voice low but firm. "We split up. Meet at the western cave." She signals the child and 1 man to follow her, while you're assigned to the other 2 men, their eyes sharp but not hostile. "Go," one says, voice low, and you follow, running down another trail, deeper into the forest. The hoofbeats still echo, but fainter, and you exhale, relieved, though you know safety here is an illusion. The trail leads through a small stream, its icy water rushing. You wade through, cloak soaked, cold seeping into your bones, but you don't stop. The 2 men, Amos and Seth, move fast, eyes scanning the dark. "You've caused big trouble," Amos says, voice low, not looking at you. "But Elias said you're worth saving." You mutter thanks, but Seth cuts you off. "Don't thank us," he says, voice deep. "Survive. That's how you repay." Their words are an axe, chopping through your self-pity. In this age, gratitude is a luxury. Only action matters. The group stops by a large rock, hidden behind brush. Amos signals you to hide, his eyes fixed on the forest. Footsteps approach, not hoofbeats, but soldiers, their torches blazing a few steps away. You hold your breath, body frozen, hand clutching the rusty knife. Two soldiers pass, spears glinting, whispering to each other. "He can't hide forever," one says, voice hoarse. "The priest wants blood." You look at Amos. His eyes are sharp as a blade, but he doesn't move, waiting. The soldiers move on, their torches fading, and you exhale, heart still pounding. Amos and Seth lead you on, through narrow trails, to a small cave where Leah and the others wait. The child huddles, clutching a wool blanket, eyes wide but fearless. Leah looks at you, her gaze softening, but her voice stays sharp. "You survived this time," she says, "but the priest won't stop. We have to get you out of Appalachia." You nod, not daring to ask more. Out of Appalachia sounds like freedom, but also a curse. A life of endless flight, always looking over your shoulder. The group rests in the cave, sharing a piece of dark rye bread and icy spring water. You eat, chewing slowly, listening to the group's whispers. They don't ask about your past, don't mention the priest. Here, as in Hidden Valley, the past is a shadow, and you're grateful for that. But then, a sound shatters the quiet. A bell, small but sharp, from afar. Leah stands, eyes sharp as a knife. "They've found the cave," she says, voice urgent. "Run!" The group bolts from the cave, racing through the forest, moonlight casting their shadows like ghosts dissolving into the dark. Hoofbeats echo again, closer, with the clink of armor. The priest, with his silver cross and blade-like gaze, is coming, and you know, he doesn't just want you. He wants the group, Hidden Valley, anything daring to defy his power. You run, lungs burning, legs aching, but you don't stop. You think of Elias, of Leah, of those who risked themselves for you, and you realize survival, in this age, isn't just flight. It's fighting, even if only by continuing to breathe. But then, an arrow whistles, embedding in the oak beside you. Leah shouts, signaling the group to scatter. You run, alone, deeper into the forest, hoofbeats and torches close behind. And as you stumble, knees hitting the ground, you hear the priest's voice, cold as stone. You can't hide forever. You grip the rusty knife, knowing this time, running may not be enough. 19. The ground beneath you trembles, cold and wet, as if the Appalachia forest is trying to swallow you into its heart. You lie there, knees aching from the fall, the rusty knife in your hand trembling, its dull blade glinting weakly under the moonlight. The priests' and soldiers' hoofbeats, heavy like a predator's heartbeat, draw closer, their blazing torches tearing through the darkness. "You can't hide forever," the priest's voice rings out, cold as stone. His silver cross glints like a final curse. You grip the knife, not to fight, but to remind yourself you're still alive, if only for another moment. The whistle of the arrow still echoes in your mind, the one that struck the oak beside you, a warning that running is no longer an option. Leah and the group scattered, their shadows melting into the forest, leaving you alone to face the priest. You stand, legs shaking, soaked cloak clinging to your skin. The forest is dense, but not enough to hide you forever. The clink of the soldier's armor grows nearer. torches sweep through the oaks like sleepless eyes. You think of Hidden Valley, of Elias, of the woman who lied for you, of Leah and the small group who risked their lives. They gave you a chance, but now that chance is fading like ashes in the wind. You run, not out of hope, but instinct. Your bare feet bleed, each step a knife in your body, but you don't stop. The forest opens to a narrow trail leading to a small cliff, below which a rushing stream glitters like a promise of freedom. You pause, breath short, staring at the dark water. The hoofbeats stop behind you, and you turn. The priest, on a black horse, cloak billowing, stands there. His gaze locks onto you. 3 soldiers, with pointed spears and blazing torches, block every escape. "No more running," the priest says, voice low, his silver cross like a ready blade. You stand, back against the cliff, rusty knife in hand. You think of the trial he promised, of fire, of water, of this age's horrific judgments. You think of your world, now a distant dream, where mistakes didn't cost lives. But then, a spark flares in your heart. Not hope, but defiance. You've run too long, pretended too long. If this is the end, you won't beg. "I'm no heretic," you say, voice small but steady, echoing in the dark. "I just want to live." The priest narrows his eyes, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Only the guilty run," he replies, voice cold. "God will judge you." He signals, and a soldier steps forward, spear aimed at you. But then a sound cuts through. An arrow whistles, not at the oak this time, but at the soldier. He falls, arrow in his chest, torch dropping to spark a small flame. The priest turns, his gaze sweeping the forest. From the darkness, Leah emerges, bow in hand, eyes sharp as stone. Beside her is Elias, small knife glinting, and the 2 other men from the group, axes and staffs in hand. "Leave him," Leah says, voice low but firm, another arrow knocked. The priest doesn't move. His silver cross glints, a reminder of his power. "You defy God," he says, voice cold, but you see hesitation in his eyes. The 2 remaining soldiers grip their spears, but their gazes waver, sensing the odds. Elias steps forward, eyes sharp as a knife. "We don't defy God," he says. "Only you." His words are a spark, tightening the air like a taut string. The priest looks at you, then at Leah, Elias, and the others. "Your blood will pay," he says, voice low, but he turns his horse, signaling the soldiers to retreat. The torches fade, hoofbeats recede, leaving you standing, breath short, rusty knife falling to the ground. Leah lowers her bow, her gaze softening, but her voice stays sharp. "You owe us," she says, not looking at you. You nod, gratitude rising like a flame, but you know the priest won't forget. He'll return, with more soldiers, with greater fire. The group leads you back to the cave, where the child and another man wait. You sit, clutching your cloak, eating a piece of rye bread hard as stone, drinking icy spring water. No one speaks much, but their silence is a gift. They chose you, if only for this moment. Leah looks at you, her gaze steady. "We'll get you out of Appalachia," she says, voice low. "But you must learn to live, not just run." You nod, not daring to promise, but deep down, you know she's right. That night, you lie in the cave, listening to the stream and the wind howling through the forest. You think of the priest, his blade-like gaze, his silver cross. You think of Hidden Valley, of Elias, of Leah, of those who gave you a chance despite not knowing you. You think of your world, now a dream, and wonder, can you learn to live, as Leah said, or will you always be a shadow, fleeing from forest to forest? But then, a sound breaks your thoughts. A bird's song, small but clear, signaling dawn. You stand, looking out at the forest, and realize, though the priest may return, though this world is harsh, you survived this night. And in the Middle Ages, sometimes, that's all you can hope for. Yet deep inside, you know, your story isn't over. The priest, with his blade-like gaze, is out there, waiting. And one day, you'll face him, not as a fugitive, but as someone who's learned to live. Until then, you walk with Leah and the group, deeper into the forest, carrying the rusty knife and a faint hope that somewhere there's a place you truly belong.